Hey, it's Lawrence from High Intensity Business. I got just done with a cracking episode with John Zarbok. John is founder of BioFit, who are a biohacking business that use technology like ARX and Carol and Vasper and things like that to deliver amazing results to their clients. John is a huge fan of high intensity training and a relatively recent convert, and just who is someone who has become incredibly passionate about this way of exercising, about using technology like ARX to transform people's lives and help them fulfill their potential. So I absolutely love speaking to John. I've been wanting to talk to him for ages because he's one of the most positive people I know in this industry. He's a member in Hit Business Membership, and he's just so proactive at using the content I provide to help him grow his business. We talk about a lot of stuff in this episode. I mean, John is so candid and transparent about his entire experience, about mistakes he's made. He's very transparent about revenue and decisions he's made around money. And he just gives some really, really solid and practical advice on mindset, on how he has been able to achieve the success that he has in his business and building a nice lifestyle business for himself, whilst balancing that with a very demanding career as a deputy CIO in the military. So he's a very impressive individual at only 35 years of age. And I think this is also quite poignant for this time. I mean, today is, as I record this, it's August 7th, 2020, right in the midst of obviously this COVID season. Unfortunately, much of the world and at least 50% of the US, I believe, is still closed or reversing or pausing opening. And so obviously it's perhaps not ideal for a lot of you to actually open a studio right now, maybe due to local restrictions. But I think we can all agree that the landscape is very well set up for a high intensity training or an ARX based business in the future. People are going to be wanting to obviously improve their health and fitness from being locked down and, kind of neglecting their health over this time, and obviously improving their resilience against viruses in general. And there's going to be a real argument for wanting to go to a smaller, private, surgically clean space like a high intensity training or ARX studio. So I am, as always, super optimistic about the future for our industry. And so I think that this episode is going to give you some really great ammunition to think about how you can plan, start, and grow your own ARX business. Once you've listened to this, please head on over to highintensitybusiness.com/tactics to get on the High Intensity Business newsletter, get updates about all the new content we publish, but also get access to High Intensity Training Business free resources to help you with your business. Please subscribe so that you are updated about every new episode that is released on your favorite platform. And without any further ado, please enjoy my podcast with John Zarbok. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to highintensitybusiness.com. This is episode 283, and today's guest is John Zarbok. John is a St. Louis native and veteran. He currently serves in the Missouri National Guard as Deputy CIO for the 35th Infantry Division. He owns BioFit, a smart fitness biohacking studio that delivers evidence-based exercise with state-of-the-art specialized training machines. He is an up-and-coming biohacker that wants to bring the most efficient and effective methods of training the mind, body, and spirit to the masses. His goal is to help co-create as many superhumans as he can and give his clients the tools to live their lives to their fullest potential. John, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Hey, Lawrence. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I appreciate you taking the time. I've been really excited to chat to you. Obviously, we spoke for the first time at REC last year, wasn't it, 2019? And it was 2019. Yeah. And I just remember we were taking a tour around some location where they were DEXA Fit, I think. And he just kind of grabbed me and was like, look, I know we're busy and I know we're like on tour, but I just wanted to say I really appreciate your work. And that was a huge compliment. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the initiative.
Well, I'll tell you, besides the Body by Science book that I got a hold of, that just completely changed everything that I thought I knew about fitness and life in a lot of ways. Listening to your podcast and a lot of your content from the High Intensity Trainer that you formerly had, I mean, that was where I went for all my stuff. You know, I didn't even know prior to meeting you, like 6 months prior to meeting you in person at that conference, I didn't even know what high intensity training was. So like I didn't have any source of anything until I found like you and that book. So I thank you for doing what you do.
You're welcome. So let's start there. How did you get into HIIT then? How did the journey start?
So it's a long story. I guess it doesn't have to be a long story depending on how long I decide to tell it. But so I've been in the Army for 17 years. I've done some active duty time. I've done some just like National Guard time, you know, part-time, full-time, you know, on and off. And I was on my third deployment in 2018 and decided that I wasn't getting the fulfillment out of the Army that I was wanting. And so I'm real big on self-actualization, and I'm real big for myself for like, once I have all of my other needs met for the most part, like I have to feel like I'm contributing to the world in like using my gifts and using my fullest potential. And what I realized is I get my self-actualization from helping other people realize their full potential and achieving their self. Like, so if I don't have anybody around me, I'm miserable because like I don't have anybody to help. And so when I came back from deployment, the only thing I knew was CrossFit and Rogue equipment and, you know, very like rudimentary personal training type stuff. And so I bought like $40,000 worth of like CrossFit equipment, and I was going to start my own studio, right? I was going to like do my own thing. And so as I was doing that, even after we got back from the deployment, we're supposed to be on like what's called dwell time, right? You go, you serve overseas, you come home, and then like they're supposed to kind of leave you alone for a little while. Well, they didn't leave me alone, and they needed me because of my job and because my boss at the time wasn't available. So I was doing his job. So I was actually the CIO for a while. So I was like the chief guy. They kept needing me to go to all of these conferences and exercises and doing all these things, which as a personal trainer, and I'm the only person in my studio, if I'm not there, how are my clients getting trained? Like they're not. And at the time, like virtual training or, you know, like writing up plans and then handing them a notebook and being like, do this for 2 weeks, I'll be back. Like that just was not even possible in my world. So I was just at my wit's end. And I didn't really know what I was going to do, if I was going to be able to be successful or continue doing this, because I enjoyed it a lot. I just didn't know if I was going to have to surrender to the military and just go back full time. Well, as I'm like, you know, reaching out to the universe and asking for all these answers and like, you know, praying and meditating and all these things, I'm scrolling through Facebook one day, and lo and behold, I see an ad. And it's a company with a machine that tells me that I only have to work out 20 minutes a week. And I was like, man, what kind of garbage is this? Like, this is really some like snake oil stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But I was intrigued enough, luckily, to click it and do a little bit more research, right? Well, a little bit more research turned into me reading Body by Science. The next day, literally the next day of finding the ARX ad, I drove to Nashville to talk to Josh Jarrett at Quantify Fitness. And I had never seen anything like his studio and how it's all set up. And I have never felt anything like an ARX machine before, or a Carol bike. And first it like blew my mind. So I got really excited and I got really enthusiastic. And then I started to get real angry. I mean, like genuinely angry, because at the time I was 33, 34. I had been working out. I've done bodybuilding shows. I've played all the sports, you know, but working out and maintaining like my figure and like, for mostly vanity reasons, but maintaining what it is that I had was taking me like 20 hours a week, right? I mean, it was like a part-time job
Yeah.
that I wasn't getting paid for, by the way.
Yeah.
And when I realized that it was only because I wasn't doing it right, like nobody knew how to tell me what high intensity training was. Like this is something that literally didn't even exist in my universe. And I started to think back of like all the hours that I've wasted, all the years that I've wasted not being able to be productive doing other things. It was it was a complete life changer. And so 6 weeks later, I owned ARX machines, and I like cashed in all of the other conventional equipment that I had, and basically spent like every last dollar of my savings on smart studio equipment, primarily the ARX machines. And that was almost 2 years ago. And I'm just like, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Love that story. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I often hear from people who are like 60 or 70 who have just discovered high intensity training and bodyweight science and were spinning their wheels for like 40 years. So
I'll tell you that I couldn't imagine. I mean, I could only know, I can relate to how I feel at my age now, but I mean, like I look at my son, who's in the other room right now, he's 8, or like I'll meet a young kid in their like early 20s, right? And to be able to expose them to this at that age, and to just, they don't know, but like we know, to have been exposed to that at such a young age, and like how just ahead of the curve that they're going to be, the time that we are saving these people it's priceless.
yeah, it is. And it makes you wonder how this isn't even more well-known and more popular. And the whole idea of exercise being a stress and people understanding that it's a negative stress, they need recovery, like it's still quite alien to the vast majority of people, which is crazy to think. So I actually wanted to skip forward because you just stimulated a question for me, which is, you said about you were so inspired by the visit to Quantify Fitness, and Josh and his team are totally legit. And you were so inspired, you literally had ARX in possession 6 weeks later, and you spent all of your cash to achieve that. So obviously ARX has a lease arrangement. I'm assuming you had a overhead in terms of premises and lighting, heating, and power and things like that. So you must have had okay. Sorry, go on.
I'm telling you, man, I'm so grateful for where I'm at right now, and I feel like I've made a lot of progress. But if you only understood like where I came from, I do not even when I jump, I just hope there's water to catch me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like this has just been a problem that my mom and my grandma and they've always told me, like I always jump before I look. And it's like when we first started, I was in a garage. Now you got to remember, when I first started, I only had bumper plates and kettlebells. Like I was old school, right? So I didn't require a nice environment. Let's say, like, let's put it like that. I didn't require like a comfortable locale. So I was in a garage. The garage roof leaked. So I had buckets that like caught the water that came through the roof. I didn't have any HVAC. So I had no heat. And in 2018, when I really first started this thing, it was like 15 degrees outside and inside. And I had clients they're still with me today. I had clients that would come in, show up at 6 o'clock in the morning in 15-degree weather with like 2 layers of hoodies, knocking out some leg presses and some like ARX Omni workouts. Like my studio environment was not sexy, right? But my overhead was very low
Mm.
at that time, right?
Mhm.
Um, then I found another spot a little bit closer to home, to my home, called Next Core. It was like a co-working space that saw a little bit of value in what it is that I was doing, and so they offered me some real estate in their area, and I was able to kind of piggyback off of some of their clients, because co-working people, for the most part, are professional people, and a very large majority of them are business owners, small business owners, if in their own, in their own niche. And so that's who I decided to go after and target, were people who were time conscious business owners. And I was literally right next door. So that really helped for me in terms of like phase two, I guess, of like a business growth. But just having air conditioning and heating,
Mm.
just having heating was a huge jump from when I first started. So
Well, thank God that resistance training warms you up pretty quickly, right? Because I'm sure that helped the client experience. Because afterwards, they probably didn't care, right? They're like, "Oh, this is actually quite refreshing." um,
yeah, no, you're
re-
absolutely right.
I'm always really interested in understanding how business owners get the first couple of clients. I get this question all the time. There's a really good interview you did, which I'll link to on YouTube, on a channel called Real Conversation. I'll link that in the show notes, which I think is great if people really want to know about you and your obsession with apple fritters and things like that. And I really enjoyed that. Um, but obviously we want to focus more on the business story here. And so how did you actually go about getting your first clients? I mean, in terms of when you were in the garage, like what did you do? I mean, clearly you have a knack for sales, which is huge. And I think that's actually the secret sauce here, is that you've just got really good sales skills because you're very personable. So can you just talk about how you got your very, like, five clients, your first five clients, if you can remember?
So yeah, so well, so are you talking about the first five post like
Well,
ARX,
you know what? It would
or
be
just
it
my
would be good to
clients
get.
ever?
Good question. Let's do three. So let's do first clients when you first started with basic equipment, first clients for ARX, and maybe that's the same, and then how you managed to actually connect and recruit the people in the co-working space.
Okay, so my very first clients, like ever, when I started with a battle rope, some 25-pound dumbbells, um, and a jump rope, in the third story of my house. Actually, this was back in 2016 when I was like, just kind of taking a stab at like, what would it be like if I actually had clients? And at that time, I was still doing the Army full time. So that was just me walking around handing out business cards, looking like a moron. You just being like, "Hey, you look like you need some training. I'll come on in."
So just
Um,
walking around St. Louis and just handing them out,
yeah,
having
literally just
conversations.
asking people, and I was charging 150 a month for like 3 sessions a week. I mean, I was like giving it away, but I just wanted the experience. You know what I mean? And I was testing the waters with, is this really something that I want to do? Right? Like, do I really want to spend my time doing it? And how is the feeling going to feel by being more of a servant of other people and helping them with things that they can't do themselves, that I find, enthusiasm and passion in, outside of the military. So there was that. And that was a short list, because in 2017 I deployed overseas, so that didn't last very long. But then when I got back, so the ARX clients I used in the very beginning, I used a lot of Thumbtack, which is an app. It's like a lead generation app that
Mhm.
people look for like deals on. So it's like Groupon, but for like different types of contractors, I guess.
Mhm.
I have found that in the beginning, I found that to be extremely helpful, because you're going to pay between maybe $7 to $9 for a lead. And for what I was charging at the time, even though it was very, very low, my return on investment with those leads were very high. And my closing percentage is like 70 to 80%. And so the ARX machines sell themselves. Like if you sit down and you actually do the workout, and if you have any inclination that you want to get better at anything in your life, you're going to come back. Right. So like, client acquisition cost can be relatively high, because in my experience, as long as you're just not a complete asshole to your people who are coming in for a demo, 8 out of 10 people who try the ARX want to come back and do it again. So that was how I acquired the first round, probably like when I was in the garage. And then leading up to the co-working space, there was a guy that one of the co-owners of the co-working space I had met at a networking event a few years prior. And I didn't realize that he was the owner of that space until I was just accidentally finding him on LinkedIn. And so I reached out and I said, hey, how are you doing? I would love to give you a demo of this awesome equipment. I think that your members could find some really good value. And I would like to talk about, what it would look like to partner. Like, how can we create a win-win? And that's really important for me, is making sure that any partnership or any relationship from a business perspective that I'm in, if we can't figure out how to both win, like I'm really not interested. Like I really do believe in the whole like business karma thing. And I just want to be able to provide as much value outwards as I possibly can. So he came in with his partner to do a demo, and about 6 minutes after the demo, after having him catch his breath, because he wasn't in very good shape, so it wrecked him pretty good. Even just the big 3 on the alpha was too much for him. But it was like 6 or 7 minutes later, and they were already like, okay, so we're going to have you leave this garage. We're going to have you move in with us over at our space, and we're just going to figure it out. And so it was literally like we were building the airplane as we were flying. Like all I knew was that someone with HVAC wanted me in their space. So like that for me, I was like, I'm sold. I don't care what the details are. Let's just do this. So I went over there and just got to meet everybody that was a member of their co-working, cohort. And I just absolutely fell in love with the whole concept. It's in a part of town very close to me, but it's South St. Louis, which there's not a whole lot of money in South St. Louis, right? Like you're not dealing with the ballers of town, but you're dealing with a lot of people who are small business owners, people who are wanting to take life to the next level. And in this particular neighborhood and area, the resources and the network is not there. It's just not. But this one place is like, it's the hub, right? It's like everybody who wants to really get out of this situation, let's all meet right here and then lift each other up so that we can all make it out of the mud. And so I just clicked, because I was one of those people, right? Because I grew up on this side of town. So I was one of those people. So I think what it is that I was offering resonated really well with a lot of people. So.
Awesome. Yeah. I had a question on the tip of my tongue there, and it's just completely gone from my head, which sometimes happens when I get too into this.
It'll come back.
It will come back. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So it's interesting. You make me think about, I had a question from a member inside Hit Business Membership recently, and he was asking, he's doing great with his studio, and he's in a position where he's just about to transition from his full-time job to running the studio full-time, but was asking for input from members, who things they wish they'd thought of before doing that, so he just can avoid any pitfalls. And I thought about this. And I thought, there's kind of almost two ways of looking at it. On one hand, it can seem logical to make sure you've got enough revenue coming into your business to obviously cover your business costs and your personal income requirements before you transition over, right? I think you muted yourself. Oh no, you've unmuted. There you go.
My son in the background playing Xbox, so I'm trying to quiet him down.
No, I appreciate it. And then secondly, the other side of it is that, to your point, there's the idea of, well, you just take the leap. You burn the ships at the beaches, and then you just crack on and figure it out, right? And you kind of, you have to, otherwise you're kind of screwed. And I would never necessarily recommend that, but that does work really well for some people. And even myself, like, it's incredible how creative you can be when put in that position. And it's amazing what you learn about yourself. Obviously, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, because if I don't want people listening to this thinking I'm going to do that and then they've got kids and a mortgage and a family, like, your absolute priority should be to provide for those people in your family and make sure they're safe and they're provided for. But so it really depends on your context, but there is something to be said for that. Just go after it and figure it out, So it's a bit of a paradoxical point of view I've got on that, but it's interesting to hear you say that, because you strike me as someone who is like, I'm going to take the risk, law of attraction, I'll figure it out, I'll do the right things, I'll add as much value as I can, and I know it will work out. And there is, I believe, some truth to that. So
so for me, I mean, you're absolutely right, man. Like, there was, and I'll save it for another time, because it is a very long story, and there's a lot of context that I feel like is needed in order for like it to really land. But back in 2016, I mean, there was a time where things were real bad for me. Like, they were real low. Like, I was writing the letters out, like, to my kids. And there was a point where once I got on the other side of that, all of my ships were burned for me, right? Like, there were so many years that I wanted to be the person to burn my own ships, right? To like give myself a no fail scenario, so that I could just do what it is that I felt like I was wanting to do, but I was too afraid to take the leap. Right? I was too attached to my paycheck. I was, and it was a really weird space. But I had my ships burned for me, and it was one of the best experiences for about 11 months. It was one of the best experiences of my entire life. If you would have asked me how it was going back then, definitely wouldn't have had that answer, right? I mean, it was dark days. But coming out of that experience, I'm so grateful for having been exposed to that side of myself, and to realize that when that scenario arises in my life, that I am going to have the fortitude and the wherewithal to not ever give up. Like, I think it's a little bit of the military experience, but that particular experience as well, there's literally nothing that I can't do, because I've already been in the position where, like, I shouldn't have been able to come out on the other end of that, but I did. So I would say you're spot on, man. Like, you want to say, burn the bridge, just do it. And like, there is no fail, but that is a very uncomfortable place to be. And if you don't have to do that, if like, and especially if you've got a family and responsibilities and kids, like, that's not like, it's some risk is okay. Like, and I would even invite, like, take as much risk as you can, like, physically feel and handle, that isn't gonna, like, send you over the edge. But yeah, but again, it's like what you and I were talking about in the beginning before we started recording. It's like, the only reason to take more risk than you kind of feel like you need to, in my opinion, is patience. The more risky you are, the more impatient you seem to me. For me, it's like a roulette table, right? Like, if you want to gamble and spend all day trying to amass some earnings, some winnings, not earnings, winnings, then you'll just bet red, black, odd, even odd, 50%, 48% chance, you're probably going to do pretty good. But if you just want to win and leave, then you're going to have to bet 1 in 37 and really hope that it hits, right? I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. That's
It's a good analogy. Not one I've heard before.
I like playing roulette. If I'm gonna gamble, I'm gambling.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing some of that, and being quite vulnerable. And I was just telling you before we started recording that I had recently recorded some content with Luke, who's, for those that don't know, is founder of Discover Strength and a mentor to many of us in high intensity training, and just an incredible individual. And we were talking about the importance of the journey, not the destination, and really appreciating that, and appreciating things like, this is being recorded on August 7th, 2020. And, we're all going through a lot of struggle right now with the way COVID is affecting individuals' health, but also lockdowns, regardless of what you think about the policies and the actual health impact, we're all being affected by it in one way or another, in terms of people's businesses as well. And it's being able to look at these things as kind of challenges that we need in order to really thrive. And it sounds like you went through something like that, maybe even much more severe from what it sounds like, in 2016, which, when you look at whatever obstacle you come up against now, you're like, well, if I could overcome that, then what's this, And that's the thing. Like, I don't know, John, how much you pay attention to Jordan Peterson, but his work has had an enormous impact on me. And I just think, whenever you come across a challenge and you overcome it, I don't think people realize that genuinely does make you better. It makes you tougher. It makes you more courageous. You actually create new neural connections to be able to deal with it. And so it's exciting to me to think that every challenge we come across and overcome just makes us better at taking on the next. And I think it's easy to lose sight of that when you're, upset and stressed out about the current situation. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, and you just reminded me of an anecdote, I guess, of kind of what I got the best compliment the other day, and it was a complete on accident compliment that one of my clients had given me. A lot of my clients are real estate people. I love dealing with real estate people. One, they have money to spend on what it is that we offer, because what we offer is not cheap because of the machines, the cost of the machines that we have. They demand their own schedule, right? They usually don't work for anyone other than themselves. And they understand the value of time, because at the end of the day, what I sell, even though I am offering the greatest exercise and most effective and efficient workout on the planet, that's not really what I'm selling. What I'm selling is time. What I'm selling is for you to have more time in your schedule to do the more productive things that you really want to do. My favorite quote of all time now, because I say it all the time and people, they think I'm an asshole, but I'm like, if you like what you're doing for exercise, if you enjoy exercise, you're doing it wrong. When I read that quote from Arthur Jones back when I was doing all of my crazy deep dive, research, that really resonated with me. And so one of the guys that's a client, Dave O, he's a real estate guy here in town, and he was the keynote speaker at one of these real estate networking events that I sponsor. And because the guy who runs the event is also a client of mine. And so after the keynote, we were talking, and I had a couple people come up to me afterwards and kind of ask me what it is that I did. And I tried to explain to him, and then Dave kind of took over, and he had said that when he's on the ARX machine and he's doing the workouts that I prescribed for him, I make sure that he gives 100%. right? And there's a way to know, right? The way that the algorithms and the ARX machines are designed, like, you know, if you're given 100%, right? And in real time, which is incredible. But the compliment that he gave me, and this is really like, this is why I love the ARX machines so much, and specifically high intensity training. I want the ARX workout. I want to take what you think you're capable of, and then I want to show you what you're actually capable of. And then I want to be with you on that journey of like the mind challenge, right? The mental fight in between. And he told me that there's so many times during his week that he feels like doesn't have enough energy, doesn't have the motivation. There's something he wants to do, doesn't really want to do it. And like, he thinks back and grabs the experience and the feeling of being on the ARX machine. And that is now his barometer on whether or not he's giving 100% in every other aspect of his life. And that's exactly what it is. Like, he, in a compliment, like in a thank you to me, told me back the exact thing that I need, like, the whole reason I do what it is that I do, to like fill my cup. Right. And so to kind of go back, like, to what you were saying, it's the hard things, the getting to the point where you just don't feel like you can go on, but you continue to go on, and then getting on the other side of that, and then realizing that, like, you're not going to die, and that you can survive, and that you can succeed. That's the most important experience, in my opinion, that you could ever have. And but then you get to be kind of somewhat crazy when, like, those are the only experiences you're trying to chase.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing that to yourself on purpose over and over and over. Because I mean, with any substantial growth, you have to experience some pain. That reminds me of a podcast I listened to the other day. So do you know who Paul Chek is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I dismissed him a few years back after, like, my new Messiah, Doug McGuff, after I read his book, Body by Science. And I just didn't think that Paul was my guy, because for a long time he was, and I had identified him as being more conventional and, old school and things like that. Well, I listened to him on the Bulletproof Radio podcast last weekend, because I was driving between St. Louis and Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And he had said something to me that I guess I maybe intuitively knew, but I just never really, like, conceptually knew, is bliss. To experience bliss, you have to have had experienced massive amounts of pain. Like, the etymology, I'm trying to make the word longer. The etymology of the word bliss comes from the word pain. Like, you literally can't be at your absolute happiest until you really understand and have felt what it is to be super sad, right? Like, the duality of the universe. And so, if you're going to grow, if you're going to get better at anything, like, you're going to have to, like, really lean into some suck before you're going to get the good part, because you got to have the bad in order to appreciate the good. Yeah.
There's so much in high intensity training. There's so much, it's not just exercise. There's just, there's exactly what you just said there, which is just a greater appreciation for everything in life, having that exposure to pain. As you said, they're a barometer for success in other areas. I've heard Owen from Live Oak Strength call or say that he realizes that the biggest impact they have on their clients, I think I'm getting this right, is they build confidence. They make people feel confident in themselves, which is connected to this. And then there's things like flow. How often do people meditate? Not very much, not as much as they probably should, or just quiet their mind. And ARX or high intensity training is meditation. You know, you're so focused on a single task for that entire time. Like it's so multifactorial in its benefits. And I think you sell it, the gateway drug is, hey, this is exercise, it will save you a bunch of time, but then it just becomes transformational, right? Once people actually become committed. And it's our job to make sure that they don't stop, and that they are persuaded and they are committed to it, you know? So I think that responsibility is on the high intensity training business owner.
Yeah, I've had to apologize to a lot of people for ruining exercise for them.
How so?
Well, I mean, I mean, you've tried the ARX, right?
Yeah.
But like, have you consistently used the ARX for a month, 2 months, like to really see like what the power of like how quickly you're able to gain strength and flexibility and bone density and all these things?
I'm so jealous because I've heard that it's just incredible, but like I've not got access to one currently. Yeah.
Soon. But like you just don't understand. You really don't. I mean, it's like a woman trying to explain to a man what giving birth is like. Like we're just never gonna. You're just never gonna get it until you experience it. Which in that case, I don't know if that's ever going to be possible. But
hopefully not.
When I've exposed people to the ARX, and then they, for whatever reason, if they take a break, or like, for example, I had a lot of clients that like paused their memberships for the COVID, or, they, I don't know, self-attrit, just for whatever reason, they don't see the value in the price, for some crazy reason. Though they come back and they tell me like, I went back to another gym and I couldn't even figure out how to use any of this stuff anymore, because they couldn't do, there's nothing that they could do on their own to match the feeling of what it is to be on an ARX machine and to be able to do it in less than 10 minutes for one workout, like a full complete workout. It's literally impossible. Mm-hmm. So they get like jokingly angry with me because they've been exposed to this thing that it's like, how do you not have this in your life now? Because everything else is like so lackluster.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they explain it to me. And I've experienced a similar thing. Like, I hate doing push-ups. The military makes me do push-ups all the time. I hate doing push-ups, but I would much rather just spend 45 seconds on a chest press on the Omni and just call it quits. Forget about it.
I mean, you're obviously in great shape, and there's a picture on your Facebook where I think you've just done like an obstacle course race, and your physique is very, very impressive. When you switched to using ARX for yourself, did you gain any muscle tissue, or were you already at your kind of genetic peak for yourself at that point?
So, when I first got the ARX machines, I was actually not in really great shape, to be honest with you. I was, I had just gotten back from the deployment. It was a few months. It was like 5 or 6 months. And I kind of hit, another, like, I don't want to say it was a low point, not anything like 2016, but I was really off my game, definitely I was about 25 pounds heavier than I am now, and not working out as much as I would have liked to have been working out. So making the transition from normally spending anywhere between 15 to 20 hours a week in a regular gym, doing all sorts of craziness and CrossFit stuff, or like pseudo CrossFit stuff, and then trying to convince myself that just like one workout a week on the ARX machine, like doing just a big 5, was adequate. That was that literally took some reframing, right? Like some neuro connecting in my brain. But once I started to feel and see the results after just a few weeks, after I saw how much stronger I was becoming, that's really where it started to click, in that I, even as an owner of ARX machines, when I started getting to the point where I was not looking forward to these exercises because of how much like discomfort I knew I was getting ready to like deploy on myself. Like that's when I knew it. That's when I knew it was like really something special. But it really wasn't until the Aura ring that I got in like early to mid 19 that things really started to get crazy for me, because I come from a culture of like more is more. And if you get more than 6 hours of sleep, then like you're worthless. Because like, why would you need to sleep that much? You know, the military is very good about, it's very braggadocious to work a 20-hour day, right? Or to only get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, or how many hours can you work in a row without resting and things like this. So the concept of getting rest or meditating, or sleeping or tracking sleep, like that was just not even, that's not even in the conversation. So it wasn't until I really started to put all the pieces together, the work, the ARX workouts, the Carol rides, the rest, the sleep, right? The naps, the meditating, getting adequate, deep, restorative sleep, and actually understanding what that means and understanding how to set the conditions in order to do those things. That's when the physique really started to look good.
Good man. That's cool.
And it felt good too, because like for me, of course I want to look as good as I can. That's my own kind of like vanity situation. But I'm old enough now, I'm 35, and I'm experienced enough and I guess mature enough to know that like looking good is an inevitable byproduct of feeling good if you just take care of yourself, right? So like you can still want to look good and you don't have to have that be the prime mover, right? Focus on your health, focus on your spirituality, focus on just taking care of the temple, right? Like the one meat suit you're going to get for the whole life. Take care of that thing. And as long as you do a pretty good job doing that, you're going to look good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I have it backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. 100% agree. It makes me think of this whole situation we've been in the last kind of, 6 months, with the whole COVID situation. It's funny because my son came along December 2019, so he's now 8 months old. And as you know, John, that's a very stressful experience. It's a wonderful experience, but it's also highly stressful and life-changing. And just as, he was reaching kind of 3 months of age, we had the whole COVID thing here, and then in Ireland at least they locked down over time for a couple months, and it was very stressful, and I was getting obviously a lot less sleep, especially in the beginning, high stress, and not realizing that those things, because I've always looked after my sleep quite well after coming along. I've always kind of, I think managed stress okay, but mostly because I hadn't had any stressful things in my life. Whereas you have a child and suddenly, you have a lot to be stressed out about, or at least for me. And so I found myself, because of those two things, I was just eating a lot more, not eating the right things. And I weighed myself the other day and I'd put on about 20 pounds during COVID. And, half my clothes don't fit me, So I'm now in a process that I'm kind of, have quite a lean physique and genetics where I kind of wear it quite well, like you wouldn't really notice it on me, but my clothes aren't fitting me. So I'm now going for a process where I'm sort of trying to get a bit more sleep. And obviously you can only manage it so much when you have a new baby, right? You do the best you can. But it's on me to then manage those things and try and get more sleep and try and not flip off the handle and control my stress better and eat better and all those things. So yeah, you're totally right. It's like if you can if you can look after your own health, if you can look after the temple, your best physique, your best appearance will express itself naturally. And that's what people probably need to focus on. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, and we've kind of touched on it a bit already, is I love getting emails from you because you're always so positive, right? And it's always something good about the business. You're growing, you're picking up new clients. I appreciate that. Like many studios out there, you've been hit by COVID and had to shut the doors for a time, or had people pause their memberships. But I just always really appreciated your positivity, and I'm just really keen to try and get more of the essence from you as to why you think you've done well as a new fitness business owner. You talked to me about, before we started recording, at the kind of peak, you were generating around 10K per month, and now you're kind of breaking even at around 5.56. However, all things considered, to break even is a huge success right now. There are lots of fitness businesses that have gone out of business completely, big box gyms, bankrupt, filing for bankruptcy. So I'd love to hear more on what you think has been kind of the ingredients that's contributed to your success, further to what you've already said about, how you went about acquiring your first few clients.
So so this is my first business venture. Like I said, the only thing that I've really known in my life professionally is the military. Being a major, is great. Getting through the officer ranks, like I'm a year away from making lieutenant colonel. And so that's the only professional atmosphere, or that's all I know. Right. And so, but once I decided that I wanted to kind of take on this business venture, there's been a lot of missteps, and I appreciate that you are labeling it as success. I am still waiting to give myself the permission to feel that it is successful. You guys did you and Luke, I think it was the last podcast that you just did with him, or maybe it was the 2 podcasts ago, but you guys did a really great job of trying to kind of set some expectations for the rest of us down here on the land. Is you can't compare yourself to other businesses that you think are more successful, because there's so many different variables that when I first started, I felt like I was in a race with Luke. Like when I met him and then I realized what discover strength. This is like the first 3 or 6 months I'm in business, and I'm like, I am in personal competition with a dude that's been doing it for over 10 years. He's got 2 honorary doctorate degrees, and runs one of the most successful personal training studios in the country, multiple locations. And here I am. I'm like, no big deal. I'll get there in 3 years. Yeah. So my expectation management in the very beginning was atrocious, right? But that's how much aspiration that I have, and that's how I knew I had something that's special, and I could do it. It was just a matter of how I was going to do it. But I would say that the key ingredient to my success, since we're talking about what that is,
success is subjective.
You're right. Mm-hmm. But the fact that I've been able to even keep the business open this long, let's say that, is that it's a lifestyle business for me. So my primary commitment, fortunately or unfortunately, is to the military. So when they call, I got to go. Right. And it doesn't matter how many clients I have, or if I have an employee to cover down for me or whatever. There have been times during my business where I have shut my own doors because, hey, the Army has this thing that I got to go do. I'll be back in a few weeks, and like I said, that was one of the main reasons why I even got ARX machines to begin with. But that still happens now. And so fortunately, I'm in a position where I've been able to hire my first person to come on and help me, which is what is mainly contributing to me breaking even now. but I pour into my clients, what they're trying to accomplish and the help and the inspiration that they need. Otherwise, because they obviously can't do it themselves. There's some narrative, there's some story in their brain that they've convinced themselves that they do not have the tools, the resources, the time, the whatever, to be the best version of themselves that they want to be able to live at their full potential from a physical perspective. So I take that and I run with them with it. Like, their goals become my goals. And as a professional and as a military officer, setting goals and then like making plans and then taking the hill and achieving the objective is like, I'm kind of good at that. And so I apply that same methodology to my clients. And I pour into them, so it's about client experience. It's about texting them every other day or every day if they need it, like really being a champion for them and making it feel like they're not just a member of a gym. There's so many people that don't know what to call my space, sometimes me included. But it's like a bullet in my heart when people are like, "Oh, I'm going to the gym," and they're referring to my space. Like, this is not a gym. I don't know what it is, but it ain't a gym. Because that's just not what we do. Like, it isn't just you show up. Nobody's even going to say hi to you or give a shit about what you're doing. You're going to get your exercise and leave. That's not what you get when you come to BioFit. Like, there is an environment. It's an experience. And I think that that's been one of the largest factors in the success so far.
I love that. I just want to underscore this. You said their goals become your goals. You pour yourself into them. This is, again, when you've done as many podcasts as I have, you see common themes in when people are successful at certain things in their business. And first reference that comes to mind, no surprise, is Luke and Discover Strength. And I don't know if it's actually Luke that mentioned this, but it's the idea that the trainer needs to care more about it. In fact, I think it was. The trainer needs to care more about that person building strength and hypertrophy than the client. And I just love that, because that's how you feel when you have a session with Discover Strength. And, I had a virtual session not long ago with Xavier, who put me through a bodyweight program at home. And I genuinely felt like he wanted me to gain 5 pounds more muscle tissue than I did, and that's so critical. And that is that, like you say, it's like experiential component that is absolutely imperative for generating referrals, right? Which is how essentially all high intensity training businesses, those that have been successful at least in terms of reaching their own goals, have grown their business. I mean, you said to me, again, I quote you, on an email to me, "I don't think conventional advertising works as effectively here as me going out and getting quality leads to come in and get a demo." Now, that's obviously slightly different in that you're talking more about you handshaking and meeting people and bringing them in. But there's some truth in that. I don't see a lot, and again, Luke and I speak about this a lot on the podcast, I don't see a lot of traditional conventional advertising strategies working well, as well as just looking at your existing clients and giving them incredible experiences, having solid processes for retention, things like educational seminars. But again, that workout experience is core, and then that being the catalyst for generating referrals. Now, don't just say, "Oh yeah, that's what happened in my business." When I ask you this, John, because I know it's tempting to say it, but I'm just curious, has that been a main generator for you in terms of referrals in your business?
So yes and no. I have had some referrals from some people, from existing clients, but not as many as I would have thought I was going to have, or not as many as I would like. This is crazy. I've actually had clients that they love it, right? They've been with me for months, 10 months, 11 months, over a year. And when I ask them, they're like, do you know anybody that you think would, that you'd want to bring in for a demo, or someone that you think would be interested? And they're like, they're like selfish about it. Like, they don't want anybody else to know about this. Like, they don't want to see anyone they know here. Right. Like, it's weird. Like, they love it so much. They don't want anybody else like messing with their toy. Right. But what I found is the people that I meet and invite into my studio, the retention of those and the likelihood that they become clients is so much higher than somebody who is just like told to show up, or doesn't like, you really have to, in my experience, convincing someone that they need this doesn't result in, because I can sell most anyone, most anything. I have sales skills, but I've been doing this for almost 2 years. And if the right person comes in, meaning that like I met you out somewhere, or you had an idea to a degree of what this is and what it can be, and more importantly, what it isn't, right? The likelihood of you coming in and signing up and staying as a client is much, much higher than if you just like see an ad on a Facebook page and you come in and you really don't know. Like, if you're not looking to improve yourself, I can convince you for a month that you should, but you're going to fall off, right? Like, this has to be something that you're searching for, not, in my opinion, not something that you're marketed to and then realize, oh yeah, maybe I should go take better care of myself. Like, in my opinion, it has to work linear in the sense that I don't want to have to try to convince you to make yourself better. Like, I want you to already be in that state. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. And, John, one for you, if you don't mind me offering some constructive criticism, is I love your website because it's super simple. I'm all for simple. But one of the things that may help with that is qualification, right? Like, if you've got a page on your website that answers and again, this is a DS strategy, that answers the 4 to 6 most common objections, or most common questions, I should say, then that will help kind of qualify the best people who end up booking that free session with you. And again, it's another idea around that is being transparent with pricing on the website, which is a bit of a controversial idea. But if you're upfront about what it costs, the type of people you work with, who's not a good fit for you, I mean, DS did a great video on YouTube. I think it's still on their website. It might not be actually, but it's on YouTube, and it's called "We Are Not a Good Fit for You" or something like that. And it's all about like, look, if you're a person who wants to, not willing to work hard, we're probably not a good fit for you. You know, if you don't want to get results, we're probably not a good fit for you. And then on the converse, it's like, if you like going to the gym 6 times a week, we're not a good fit for you. And by doing that, the selection of leads they get in are such high quality that their time spent then, doing demos with those leads is far more efficient, and their conversion rate is so high. So your 70-80% conversion rate would probably be like 95 or like 98% if you tweak that potentially. So but it's interesting because when you meet people, perhaps you are finding naturally, and again, maybe there's a selection bias there where you're speaking to people and pitching what you do, and then they're taking you up on it because they're already a good fit. Because they do fit that kind of target market that you're after, that busy professional who really, really wants results.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And yeah, I am experiencing some weirdness in the business because like the website is still Freedom Fitness STL, right. And like there's been a lot of stagnation with the website, mainly due to well, I guess it's kind of half of it is funding, because the marketing budget has shortened quite a bit, but also just time in terms of being able to commit time to the people that I have kind of like in the background who are helping me with like branding and marketing and things like that. Because I have so many like plates on saucers and sticks that I'm trying to balance, especially right now with like the COVID stuff happening and like the military, starting to, expect me to be a lot more involved. And so, yes, thank you for that advice, because a lot of what it is that I do try to model after Discover Strength, because like, why wouldn't you, right? They're successful. So like, short of just like opening my own Discover Strength in St. Louis, like I'm gonna try to lean on those experiences as much as I possibly can. And I'm super bummed that I wasn't able to make it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember the name of it, but whatever Luke's, he had like a coaching thing down in Florida.
The Real Hit Experience.
Yeah, that thing.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I really wanted to get down there and experience that. And I know that he took that off the table for a little while. But it just wasn't in the cards, for me to get down there, timing wise. But, I definitely imagine that there's a time that, that I hire Luke in some capacity, to teach me more of what it is that he knows, because I mean, look at him. He's
absolutely.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. And he may, who knows, he may decide to restart the Real Hit Experience. I know that he's very much obviously interested in franchising DS, and that is going to probably be the main focus for him, I assume. But for yourself, I mean, we were talking about this offline, John, briefly, but effectively what Luke does in the Real Hit Experience is he takes Traction, he takes EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, and shows you how to implement that in a high intensity training business context, because it's basically timeless principles of business that work. And his Discover Strength, a lot of what he's done is based on those principles. And so when I learned about that, I was so excited about it. That was the impetus for me reaching out to Luke and saying, hey, Luke, let's do the Traction series, which is a 15-part series we've done in the Hit Business membership, which is basically a full checklist to show you how to implement that stuff in your business. And I'm actually going to package that and sell it as a standalone product outside of the membership for people who perhaps want to purchase something like that before a membership commitment. And so I'm actually updating my website at the moment, because my website is ancient. So talking about websites. And so that's kind of like I'm super excited about that, but that won't be ready for a couple of weeks. But when it is, then we'll do the Traction series product. But no, I just want to bring this back to what you were saying. I think firstly, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, you're a deputy CIO in the military, for Christ's sake. Like, you have so much going on that you can't throw your whole self into your business, so you can't progress as fast as you'd like to. But all things considered, you've done incredibly well. I mean, there are people that are working full time in their business who are nowhere near where you're at. So I think you got to maintain that perspective. What's that? Go ahead.
I will try. I appreciate you framing it like that, but I don't know what it is. My brain's broke, but like, I just can't. I don't know if I've ever felt successful in anything that I've done. I keep doing, and as soon as I feel like maybe I've accomplished something, I purposefully just like push the needle so far ahead of me again that all I'm ever doing is I'm chasing this thing called success, and I have no desire or capacity maybe to ever sit down in a chair and like take a bite of my success sandwich. I just like
I love that. Well, but in your defense, like, that's not a completely terrible thing, right? Because I think all of us have that. I'm just as bad as you. I'm super impatient. I'm so hard on myself. It's ridiculous. Like, I think a lot of people who do achieve things have that mindset, but then I guess we're also trying to kind of maintain that balance of feeling like trying to summon that motivation to continue to grow, but then also be grateful for what we have. Because if you're not grateful for what you have, you won't be grateful for what you get. So it is important to have to cultivate that, I think. But yeah, I think it's healthy to have a certain amount of you're not happy where you are. I mean, you listen to anyone who's achieved anything, they're all like that, or a lot of them are like that. In fact, I was listening to Jocko Willink on Rogan the other day, and he's like that to an insane degree. You know, I'm sure you're familiar with him and probably a fan of him. I'm just curious, you know, I mean, not wanting to ask specifics, but, you know, is part of the pool in the military, I'm assuming they pay you pretty well, right? So considering how senior you are, right? So from what I understand, it's very good income at that kind of level, your experience.
Yeah, it's six figures income.
Okay.
And so when I first made the decision to not take that paycheck and to, bet on myself and just go at it alone, essentially, and not have the safety net of a six-figure income to like help me. Now, I don't know if that was pride. I don't know if that was ego, probably a little bit of both. Probably just a challenge to myself. Like, can I do this without, mommy military, helping me out? I feel like I've kind of checked that block to prove to myself that I can. But I'll tell you, that was a really hard paycheck to turn down in order to prove to myself that I could do what it is that I'm currently doing. But yeah, to answer your question, it's good pay and the benefits are amazing.
Yeah.
So it's hard to walk away from.
Let me just clarify. So I just want to make sure I understand that. So you were actually offered a more committed position, which you turned down. Is that okay? Which would have been more hours?
No, actually, it would have been half the hours. It would have been half the work, half the stress, and about 100 times more the pay. Because when I first opened the business, I was living off my savings. Like I had when I first started this business, I had no income at all. I had a savings account, and 90% of the savings account I spent on equipment. Because the ARX machines and the Caro bikes, and the Vaspers, those are not cheap.
Yep.
And so but that was if I had it to do over again, being where I am now, no way would I have done it that way. I would have done it a little bit more smartly, and more conservative.
How so?
Well, I mean, I probably wouldn't have invested all of my own money. So the first mistake that I feel like I made was, I violated the first like Robert Kiyosaki rule, right? Like OPM. Like you want to use other people's money to build your wealth in your business. And so I was very, very focused on like being debt free as a business, right? So I did everything that I possibly could to spend my own money so that I wouldn't have to be in debt. I grew up being told that debt is dumb and never be in debt no matter what. It just didn't seem to matter how many books I read to, mainly about real estate, but like, how many books that I read to try to convince me otherwise. Like that is a deep ingrained belief that I've convinced myself of. If I would have realized, if I would have like poked my head up from the sand for a moment and realized how cheap money is to borrow, and if I would have just taken like the chunk of money that I had and just used it as collateral to get way more, like 5 times more money than I would have had at the beginning to start, I mean, we'd be having a completely different conversation right now. So for me personally, I think that's the first thing that I did wrong was I didn't borrow smart money at low interest in order to build. And so what that did was that created a lot of stress for me, right? So like I'm making $0, right? Because I'm a brand new business and I'm working my way up to like breaking even so I can pay off this equipment, or pay for the ARX memberships, subscriptions. and I'm not paying myself, right? So I mean, like for the first 18 months, John didn't make any money. Like I had my so I'm still in the military part-time, right? So like 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer, but that is nowhere close. That is like maybe 5% of what I would make normally full-time.
Yeah.
So I chose, because I'm such a genius, I chose to not make, a little bit over like mid six figures, right, income, and just be like, nah, I don't need that. I'm going to just do everything myself. I'll be able to make, I'm Luke Carlson. I'll be able to make that in 6 months. No problem. And so like to do it that way, I don't recommend doing it that way. Like your pride and your ego and your like the desire to want to feel like, yeah, I did it all by myself. Like that's 18-year-old shit. Like don't do that. Like when you're an adult and you have like some maturity and experience behind you, like there's nothing. There is, I'm talking to somebody needs to hear this right now. I don't know who it is, but like no man is an island, and sometimes it takes a lot of
John, this is like the worst timing ever, but just as you said, someone's got to hear this. Your sound cut off. I might edit it. I might not. It actually might have been my connection, so apologies. So do you want to just restate what you said? They've got to hear it.
Yeah, of course. You know what? Maybe that's the thing they needed to hear. But no, whatever it is that you accomplish, any success that you get and you have or you achieve in your life, you will not do by yourself. You can't do it alone. Someone, somewhere, someone a part of your family, whether it's a spouse, a friend, a wife, a parent, a friend, a mentor, a strategic business partner, someone else is you're going to have to share that credit, right, with someone. So if you're at a position and you're just like, no, I only want all of this myself, like you don't get it. It doesn't exist. Yeah. Someone somewhere is going to have to help you. So just like put that pride stick down and just realize that like you're going to have to ask for help. And there's nothing in life that I hate more than having to ask for help. But the faster I get over that every time, because I'm telling you, I learned this lesson a lot over and over, but every time I learn that lesson and I humble myself a little bit and I realize asking for help is okay. The faster I get over myself on that and I ask for that help, I mean, what it is that I need or what it is that I want, it's just the flow just happens.
How have you asked for help in the past?
Asking clients for a referral, something as simple as that, right? Like, oh, I can get all of my own clients. Like, no, you can't. You're going to need some help, asking people for criticism, right? Asking people for feedback and hearing something that you may not want to hear, asking to hear something that you don't want to hear, but you definitely need to hear. Follow your own advice. Like, you're not going to tell your clients all the time what they want to hear. As scary as that might be to some people, and like, oh, if I tell them something that they don't want to listen to, then maybe they won't come back. Well, then like maybe they weren't the client that you're supposed to have, because if you're just walking around telling people what they want to hear all the time, like you're not making any change. You're not helping to make anybody better. But just, help with like, if I don't have time to like take the trash out, just asking somebody to do that. Like it's the little things that you spend your time potentially wasting when you really don't need to do that. You can focus on other things. Fortunately for me, this is a really, really big one. Like I haven't had to ask anybody for like any money, right? Like, so financial support is something that
I have a
Except for the
real
bank.
issue with that. Yeah.
I did ask the bank for some money, and they gave it to me. But yeah, like that is like one of those things that I don't know if I would literally declare bankruptcy and like die under an underpass before I can like ask another
The
human being for
shame.
money. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
I
that's
am
my thing.
exactly the same way. Yeah. It's
That's my
difficult.
thing, man. Like
Yeah.
it's really, really hard.
I spend my whole life complaining about people that do ask for money. So I'm like, I can't be that guy.
Right?
um, yeah. That's a tough one. You talked earlier about you wish you had used smart money early on. I'm thinking people will hear that now and they'll be like, because there'll be people listening to this who are kind of on the brink. They're thinking about investing in ARX or not ARX, maybe other technology, and just starting some kind of high intensity training business. And I don't know anything really about the interest rates in the US on bank loans. And last time I heard, they were like negative interest rates, which is weird. And I don't really fully understand. But obviously, there's a lot of economic uncertainty. Everyone's a tiny bit worried. What does it look like there now in terms of getting out loans for business? Is that something you would still encourage the new business owner to look at? Yeah, go ahead.
100%. They're giving money away. And they're literally giving money away in the United States. Like that's a whole nother situation that probably don't want to talk about right now, that in terms of like feelings and opinions about that. But like,
Right.
it's like so for example, and I'll just be completely transparent, right? So like when I first got the ARX machines, like it was, I don't know, I think I made a down payment of 25 or 30,000, like just to even like get in the game, right? Well, the ARX machines are much, much, much more expensive than that, right? And so in order to acquire them, I had to finance them, but I had to finance them through like an equipment finance company. And I didn't know any better, right? But all I knew was that I had this big pot of money and that I could afford the monthly, payment for this finance company. But like in my mind, it was like, okay, I'm going through the ARX people. They're obviously going to send me to where, like the best person is for me. Like they're interested in getting the sale. I'm interested in getting the equipment. How do we need to make this happen the fastest way possible? Right. And so like, that's what they facilitated for me. And because I'd never been in business before, I didn't really know like what questions to ask, or, if I had any other options. Well, it turned out after a couple months, what I realized was I was paying like 40% interest on this equipment loan, right? Because it was like, I was a very high risk person to lend to, because again, at the time I didn't have a job. I had this big like stack of money in my savings account, but they don't necessarily care about that. All they care about is like, we're going to give you this money, and then like we're going to, based on your credit score, essentially, like we're going to hope you pay it back. Well, I don't know if you know anything about like small business loans, but they do not lend at 40%. They lend at like 5% or 3% in some instances, right? So like my monthly payments in the beginning for the ARX machines were astronomical. And it was because I borrowed dumbly, right? That's a new word, by the way. You can keep that. Smartly and dumbly. But I didn't know any better. And so it wasn't until I was like 8 months in that I started to really look at the numbers and the finances. And I'm like, there's gotta be something different that I can do here to like drop the expense so that my P&L looks a little bit better. And lo and behold, I went and started looking at bank loans. And sure as shit, I didn't even have to give them the business plan. Like I was already using the bank that I was in. So they already knew how much money I was generating a month. Like they already had all the financials there. I walked in and they were like, well, how much do you need? And I'm like, I don't know, 120K. That would cover me for the machines and like paying off some other things. And I mean, like within like 4 days, man, I had this money.
So what was that, like an oversight from ARX?
Um, I don't want to blame. I mean, honestly, man, I don't want to blame them. I mean,
Sure.
they're just in the business of selling shit, and the shit that they're selling is the best. So there's no argument there. But at the end of the day, like they're a business just like anybody else. Like they want to get their product out and they want to get paid.
But could they have not done something with the bank so as to make it more feasible for you, or was that just not on their radar? Or
I honestly have no idea, man. I don't
okay,
remember. I know that they had a price tag that I could afford, but just not all up front. And they had their finance company that they were working with um, in order to get me the machines
yeah,
as quickly as I wanted them, right?
yeah,
So I would say I'm a very I'm a Gary V guy in the sense that like everything is my fault, right? So every single success that this business has, like I will definitely take most of the credit for, but every single failure that I ever have in life, I am responsible for that. So like I'm not gonna punt that to the ARX guys.
okay, yeah,
But if you're finding yourself in anything that might be similar to what my situation is, like if you can get a bank loan, and that's the thing, Lawrence, I wasn't patient. I saw the ARX video. I woke up the next day on a Sunday morning. I woke up, I drove to Nashville, right? I saw the machines. I was like, I gotta have these. And I didn't even sit down and figure out how I was gonna do it. I just did it. Like, I don't recommend doing that.
yeah.
Take some time, be patient, build a plan. Like I got so wrapped up into like, I want to be the first ARX person in St. Louis or like in Missouri, which I was. But I'm telling you, 2 years later, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered if I was the 10th guy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
You got to be patient. And if you're going to go borrow money, don't do it from a company that's going to give you an equipment loan. Don't do that. Go to the bank, do it smartly, maybe find an investor or two. You will have much less stress, and your numbers and your P&Ls and your profit will materialize much faster, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really appreciate your candor. And it would be a good time for me to say that for those listening, please understand this is not a substitute for financial advice. This is obviously just mine and John's opining and experience on what we heard and what obviously John has gone through. But yeah, obviously, please talk to your financial advisor and seek official sources for financial advice. John, I wanted to ask you about your kind of long-term plan. You mentioned, note to me, you've got kind of a 3-year goal. Talk to me about that.
So, recently there's been some like an audible, so to speak, called on my life because I'm deploying overseas in like late 21, 22. So when I deploy every 4 years. So, I mean, it's a very easy schedule for me to know like when I'm going to be gone. So I'm going to be out of the country for a very significant amount of time, starting like early next year, late next year, 21. And so if I don't want my business to shut down while I'm gone, which I don't, then I have a lot of work to do in terms of trying to find somebody who is going to care, 60% for my business the way that I do and for my clients. So I'm on my way. To getting there. I just hired my first general manager, who is a client actually. So the people that I've
Happens so
had
often.
that have been the biggest prospects for people to hire are clients because they come to me and they're like, hey, this is amazing. I would really love to work here. And I would really love to like show other people this thing, which is like a huge compliment.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's been he was one of the first five clients that I had, and he's been with me the whole time since the garage. And he quit his job in the corporate world and was like, I don't really want to do that anymore. I kind of want to just work here. So like, how can we make that happen? And so I wasn't prepared for that conversation at all. But I was able to kind of shift some things around and change a few plans and some expectations of mine in order to accommodate, because the thing is, even though it's a year away, like that year is going to go by so fast. Like time just seems to only be speeding up somehow. And so if I don't figure out how to systemize my business now and be able to survive without me now, there's no way I'm going to be able to make that happen within, a month or two, just right before I leave.
Yeah.
So the plan,
awesome. Go ahead. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So the plan is to really get serious about the systems of the business. Right. And so it's not how I really wanted to shift in terms of just having clients perform their own sessions, essentially, because the ARX machines really do lend the ability for anyone who can learn how to push buttons on a computer and follow directions. Anyone can use an ARX by themselves. I don't particularly recommend doing it by yourself, especially to start. And I like facilitating the sessions on the ARX with my clients, but I am finding that I'm most likely transitioning from a one-on-one or a one-on-two, like very semi-private, session with clients, personal training, to a more like do it yourself. Like, we're going to provide you with the guidance, the motivation, and the training on how to do what we think you should be doing on the machines, but you're going to basically do it yourself. And what that does is, one, it allows for more volume, more quantity of people to come in, because now we're more calendar focused. So people are like buying time on a calendar, and we're keeping time management as the system. But it also allows me to drop prices, and it allows me to get and hold more clients, more density of clients, because now you're not paying for my time, right? Like
you'll be able to hold your profit margin because of the lower labor cost, right? So you can reduce the price but maintain a good profit margin.
Exactly. So instead of having one-on-one, right? Trainer client, we have 1-on-5. So we have someone who is on a shift, essentially, managing this space, making sure that everybody has what they need, making sure nobody's doing anything unsafe, that they could potentially hurt themselves, which the likelihood of that on any of these smart fitness equipment is like, 0.5% chance. You really have to be like super negligent on an ARX machine to hurt yourself doing it. I mean, you have to like be trying to hurt yourself. You definitely can't hurt yourself on a Vasper. So, but anyways, so that's the model that I'm shifting into, because my commitment to my time away in the Army is seemingly getting more and more. Like, so I'm noticing a trend. Like, they are asking, and by asking I mean telling. They are expecting me to be gone away from St. Louis more and more and more. And so in anticipation of them being like, okay, well, you're just going to be here now full-time from now on. In anticipation of that, I am making some very serious changes in the business, but I feel that is what is going to help me grow and scale a little bit faster than what I would have naturally been able to if I had keep what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, what an incredible forced deadline. I know you've got a very important appointment coming up, John. So I'm going to we'll close it up here. But I just wanted to underscore what you're saying. I think that's great to have a deadline like that, where you're like, I have to work to that point. I have to make sure that by that point, I can leave this business and it can run itself with the right systems, SOPs in place, chain of command, understanding, all of that stuff. And I know I keep saying it, but the Traction series will show you exactly how to do that, start to finish. Like, especially around documenting processes and things like that, and delegation and hiring and scaling.
Yeah, I've been following that series a little bit.
Okay.
Time dependent. I haven't been able to really dive in, but I'm glad that you reminded me about it, because I want for myself and my general manager to go through that together, so that he and I have the same understanding of how we're going to do it, because we both know what we want to do. But I don't, because like he was a general manager of a brewery inn for like 10 years. And so, I mean, he's a high performer. He knows what success is supposed to look like when it comes to like managing things and processes and people. So like I have way more faith in him, to carry out my vision and my passion, than I would most other people. But he's never done it in this industry before. And he's never had to really get into like the client relationship building, right? Like with all of the different types of personalities. Because when you're a trainer, when you're working in a capacity that we're in, you're not just a person who's, delivering exercise to people and then they leave, right? Like, you're a friend, you're a coach, you're a mentor, depending on the person. You're a psychiatrist, you're their therapist. Like, there's so many things. It's so multifaceted because of the personal experience. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. Like you are getting most people at their most vulnerable, like they're there doing the thing that they are the least good at. And they are expecting you to like give them the confidence and give them the strength and give them the hope and give them the aspiration and the motivation and everything. It is very like energetically draining. So if you don't know how to manage that properly, your relationships with your clients can suffer. And if there's no relationship between the trainer and the client and like what it is that they're getting from you outside of the ARX workouts or the smart workouts, then they can't any other trainer. They're just going to bail. Because I've told you, like, when I leave, every time I leave, I get some client that gets real nervous, like maybe I'm not coming back. And even though they love the exercise that they get, if they don't get the John experience, they get interested.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. And that's the thing that I've realized. It's like, if I don't design my business not around me, right? It's not about me. I never really intended it to be about me, but I think it's just that it's natural with my charisma and my personality that just I have become one with the smart fitness exercise. And it's like, some of my clients, it's a package deal. Like, they don't want one without the other. Yeah. And that's not gonna help me succeed in the business aspect of things. So I'm in the process of figuring out, like, how do I pull John and my flavor out of it, which hurts a lot. Because that's what I really prided myself on, what has gotten me up to this point, right? The whole like pouring myself into my clients and really giving a shit. Like, the give a shit factor has got to be like needle in the red. Absolutely. But it's so important to me that, and it doesn't matter how many locations that I ever end up with, 1 or 10 or 100, I don't ever want my business to feel like an assembly line or like an Orange Theory or like any type of a place where it's just like you're just a face and a body and in a membership that, it's like nobody even really knows who you are. That's not, if I can maintain somewhere in the middle of where I am currently and the systematic version of kind of like people in, people out, I will do everything that I possibly can to maintain that.
Yeah. It's super interesting you bring that up because it's one of the big vulnerabilities of the big box is they don't have as many of those personal relationships with clients. And I think
they make their money on hedging their bets that you're not going to even show up. Well, like you're a health club, you're a health facility that makes your money by hoping that the people who you are in business to help don't fucking come.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you, man. It didn't even occur to me that was even going on, right? Like I always knew like, oh, it's $10 a month. It's just, wasted money. But it wasn't until I actually got into my own business and I actually started to help people get better and improve their overall, circumstance of life that I'm like, these bastards are making all this money, way more than I'm making, by convincing people that they need something that they're never going to use and then hoping that they never use it. Like,
yeah, or hoping that they don't cancel. That's really common in a lot of subscription models, and it's like they almost want it to be under the radar. They want people to sign up, and then it's so low that they don't really care. But that's never going to last. It's never going to create good retention because as soon as people do click, they are going to cancel, and that's why you have these really high cancellation rates, in big box gyms as well for the most part. John, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I couldn't imagine being in a business where my main effort, my main objective is literally only to just separate people from their money.
Yeah.
Like,
fulfillment.
Personally, I couldn't imagine it. Call me a bad business person, but like I wouldn't ever do that. I couldn't. I would rather be overseas for multiple tours making money that way than in some like inauthentic way of doing business, in my opinion.
I think you're right. I don't think there is I don't think there is a good business person who can operate in that way. I think any decision that's made without integrity is not one that is long lasting and really results in any real success, in my opinion. John, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been awesome, actually. Really, really enjoyed talking with you. Long form like this, because we didn't really get to talk much at Rec, did we? I mean, we had a small chat. I think we probably had a couple conversations after that, but you or I were always been interrupted, or there was another thing to get to, and it's one of those events where it's just so much going on. It's so exciting, hard to have a conversation like this.
Yeah, no, this is great. Thank you so much for caring and for showing interest. And, I just, I could talk about my passion all day, and so I hope that in some way, because like I said, my success is definitely subjective, and I don't consider myself to be like, I'm probably one of the least accomplished people you've had on your podcast, which was somewhat of a nervous thing for me to begin with. But, I just hope I hope something came out of my mouth at some point that someone can use to, even if it's just don't do what I did. Let me save you from some of the mistakes. Like if that is at least what I could offer to somebody, then that would make me happy.
Yeah, rest assured, I think this came out really, really well. And I know my listeners will find this very, very useful. I've done enough to know the ones that really, really resonate. And it's going to be one of those for sure. What's the best way for listeners to find out more about you, John? Like your website, things like that?
So right now, even though the business is BioFit, and I'm in the process of converting it into a different website, freedomfitnessstl.com is the website. BioFit St. Louis or BioFit STL on Facebook is probably going to be a really great place. Or if they have any questions, you can email me at john@biofitstl.com. Or if you're local in the States over here and you want to call me, I'll set up a call. And I talk to other ARX owners like on a very regular basis. I try to create a community because one of our successes will continue to lead to all of our successes. Because as fast as smart fitness and micro gyms and ARXs, as fast as they can become popular and mainstream and they get more organic Google searches, the more successful we're all going to be.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking after that New York Times article came out just before COVID, which is unfortunate or fortunate, depending on how you look at it. Unfortunate for the studio, probably, short term. But that article that came out talking about ARX, talking about quantified fitness, is going to help all of you guys, right?
Yeah, I would hope that it would, but we need way more exposure for more places, and so I don't hoard my information or my experiences, and I hope that I've been able to show, like, I'm very transparent, and I don't believe in like hiding my faults, or like, I try to be as humble as I can about my successes, and I don't want to like blow my own horn too much, although I don't really feel like I have much to horning or blowing to do, but but it's like, I just want to help other people be successful. And like I said in the beginning, I get my cup filled by filling other people's cups. And if I don't have anybody else around me to help or to lift up in some way, like, I feel worthless and I feel empty. So if anybody if there's anyone who sees this or listens to this and who just wants to talk or learn about or ask me anything, like, I'm an open book. So
awesome. Appreciate it. And for everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode and download free PDF resources to help you grow your high intensity training business, please go to highintensitybusiness.com, search for episode 283. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.